This is You're Probably Right. Entertainment first, everything else is just bonus. Opinions, all ours. Sometimes backed by research, but never the final word. There are always exceptions, so take it with a grain of salt and a slight dusting of chili powder.
How you doing? Hey guys, this is MCM, aka Michael C. Murray, and this is You're Probably Right podcast. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked back at a relationship and realized it didn't just hurt you, it changed you? Not all at once either. Little by little, you got quieter, more tired, more unsure, more willing to let things slide that you normally wouldn't let slide. You got quieter and you just weren't yourself. You weren't who they met. You weren't who you were just before them. And by the time it ended, you weren't just really grieving them, you were trying to find yourself. That's what I want to talk about today. You know, the feeling that you know someone at some point kind of took you. And I'm not trying to say it in like a weird way. It's like there were these certain things that you just wouldn't do. You just wouldn't allow. No matter the star, no matter the rich person, no matter the influencer or whatever it is, there's certain things that be like, would you do that? No. Yeah, we probably have things to say, oh, would you do this for $1 million? Yeah. And then you have these certain things that were like possibly like no-nos. Or maybe it would take $1 million. It's still a heck of a thing. And you find yourself settling for it at some point. And it seems like once you started settling, whatever point that was, because maybe even now you still can't even figure out what that was, it changed you. And sometimes you try to backpedal out of that attitude. Maybe it's something that you do for someone. Maybe it's overgiving that you do, or whatever it is. But you sometimes, if you go to certain extents, you have a hard time saying no even to that person. And you want to say no. You feel the right thing is to say no, but you don't. And you want to. Anyhow, that's what I want to talk about today. If you heard my episode, Heal After a Breakup Without Losing Yourself, Rebuild Boundaries and Self-Worth, this one sits right underneath that one, I suppose. Maybe better, who knows? It's kind of like, thinking Jordan LeBron. Is he better? Was he better? That episode was about healing after the damage. This one is about understanding how the damage happened in the first place. How do people slowly lose themselves trying to be loved? How do you start calling self-betrayal patience, loyalty, understanding, or just being there for somebody? Because some relationships don't just break your heart at the end. They wear you down while you're still in them. They make you question your needs, doubt your instincts, and keep giving more when you're already running on empty and you really don't have anything to give, even to the point where you're hurting yourself and you know you're hurting yourself and you're still doing it. And if that sounds familiar, then yeah, this one's for you. Not the wishy washy, things went bad, yada, 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 I'm fine. No, not them, not you guys. Although you can listen in to make sure it doesn't happen to you. I think one of the hardest realizations in life is finding out that the breakup wasn't actually the first loss. The first loss was your peace. The first loss was clarity. The first loss was the version of you that used to know what felt wrong right away. The first loss was your ability to sit with yourself and feel steady. That often goes before the person does. See, when people talk about heartbreak, they usually picture the ending, the final call, the text, the silence, the coldness, the cold shoulder, maybe, the moving on, the new girl, new guy, the betrayal, maybe caught in the act, whatever it was, right? But a lot of times that ending is just the moment you finally can't deny what's been happening for a long time. You just, at this point, can't deny it at all. Some of y'all didn't lose yourself in one dramatic moment. You lost yourself in the little negotiations and the moments where you told yourself, it's not that bad. In the moments where you swallowed what you really felt because you didn't want to start another problem after problem after another problem after that problem. In the moment where you accepted crumbs because the full meal stopped coming a long time ago. In the moments where you knew something was off, but you told yourself to be more patient, more understanding, less needy, less intense, less sensitive. And let me say this clearly to you, my friend, because again, we're just hanging out. Maybe we're drinking tea. Maybe we're sitting by seaside. Maybe you're having a really, really horrible day on a beautiful day. Have you ever noticed that those are some of the worst days of your life if you look back? It could be just me. I remember I had one when I was about 12, and I think I had it at 16 again. I think things just weren't what I thought they were going to be at those birthdays, weird enough. And maybe I was all sucked in on myself, but I remember the worst days, even after that, the worst days of my life were on days where I would look at the beautiful blue sky, the wonderful sun in the sky, perfect weather. It was so perfect, I can't even remember what I was wearing at all. I knew I wasn't wearing a coat, and I know I was very, very comfortable. And at a couple times, I felt this sense of hopelessness come over me. And as I said, it's easy. It's so easy. And maybe nobody ever said this before. It's so easy to be depressed on a rainy day where maybe like outside and you like to see the blue skies and all the different things when the sun is shining and it's warm. It's easy on a gloomy day, on a dark day, a dark cloud day where it looks like the sun will never come out again. Although it will come out at some point. It's easy to be miserable on maybe in a week where there's been literally 7 days of cloud and you don't even remember what the sun looks like. Easy to feel sad, but on a perfect, wonderful day. Anyway, that's probably just my opinion. Listen, a relationship can train you to mistrust your own signals. If every time you bring up a problem, the problem becomes you, that'll mess with a person. That'll make you start rehearsing your own pain before you speak it. That'll make you start thinking, maybe I should wait. Maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe I'm asking for too much. And now look at what's already happening. Your focus isn't on whether something is healthy anymore. Your focus is on whether your feelings are allowed to exist in the first place. And that is, although I hate to say the word, it's so annoying, but that is the shift. It's not a small thing. That's one of the first ways people start losing themselves. They start trusting their inner no. They're, they stop trusting their discomfort. They stop trusting the confusion. And I think confusion gets underrated. People think confusion means I need more time. Sometimes confusion means your spirit already knows something your mind is trying to negotiate with. Sometimes confusion is not a lack of information. Sometimes it's too much information. And none of that lines up. Words one way, action another way, promises one way, patterns another way, attention one week, distance the next. Warm today, freezing cold tomorrow. And because there are still some good moments in there, you keep telling yourself the whole thing can't be what it actually looks like, what it is. But listen to me. If a relationship keeps making you feel emotionally off balance, small, anxious, unsure, and drained, that is not something to keep explaining away forever. At some point, your body starts paying for all the lies your hope keeps telling. And that's where a lot of people end up. They're exhausted, but they don't call it exhaustion. They call it love. They call it loyalty. They call it trying. They call it being the bigger person. They call it standing by somebody. But really, what's happening is that they're carrying way more than two people were ever meant to carry on one back, for sure. Now, let's go in deeper because this is where it gets all tricky. A lot of people think that overgiving means their love is deep. Sometimes it is, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes overgiving is not a sign that your heart is in such a beautiful, healthy place. Sometimes overgiving is what people do when they feel the bond slipping and they're trying their hardest to save it with whatever type of effort they need. Sometimes they realize if they do the little thing that is really, really harmless, it just opens the door for you to do the big thing. And you can't help yourself. And you feel that you should be able to do the little thing. But every time you do the little thing, it widens you up, ready to do the big thing for them. That's the difference. If somebody feels themselves getting less attention, less affection, less consistency, less emotional safety, they often don't do actually less. You'd figure you'd pull away. Well, you nothing for me, nothing for you. No, they give in more. They do more. They become more available, more giving, more generous, more helpful, more patient, more useful, more willing to understand the other person's wounds than the other person is willing to understand the damage they're causing to them. That's a painful place to live because from the outside, it looks like devotion, But from the inside, a lot of times it feels like fair. It feels like if I just do a little more, maybe this gets back to where it used to be. If I just do this little thing better, maybe they'll soften. Just a little rough around the edges, not happy, not smiling enough, or then smiling at least a lot less than the average person. If I just explain myself the right way, maybe they'll finally get it. If I just prove I'm not the problem, maybe they'll stop treating me like one. And some of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. You weren't just loving, you were auditioning. You were trying to prove your worth to somebody who was benefiting from your effort while staying undecided about your value. That's brutal. Because the more one-sided the thing gets, the more the giving person usually blames themselves. They don't usually say, wow, this other person is taking a lot and giving so little. No, they say, what else can I do? What am I missing? What am I not giving? What can't I get? Why can't I get it right? And that is one of the cruelest traps right there. You start trying to solve a problem that is not actually being created by lack. You're trying to fix their inconsistencies with their consistency, or with your consistency. Sorry. You're trying to fix their selfishness with your sacrifice. You're trying to fix their immaturity with your patience. You're trying to fix their avoidance with your transparency. Sharing maybe too much. You're trying to fix their lack of character with your extra effort. And that doesn't work really. That doesn't work because some problems are not sitting there waiting for you to love them hard enough. Some problems are built into the person's way of relating. Some people do not know how to hold love. Some people only know how to enjoy access. And that's a very different thing. I think that's where another painful realization comes in. Being needed is not the same as being loved. A whole lot of people have been confused by that because being needed can't feel intimate. Somebody calls you all the time, needs your support, needs your help, or maybe you offer it. It needs your emotional steadiness, needs your forgiveness, needs your ride, needs your air, needs your prayers, needs your encouragement, needs your softness, needs your stability, needs your body, needs your house, needs your loyalty, needs your understanding, needs your silence, needs your benefit of the doubt, needs your labor, needs your grace, needs your light, needs your money. Let me tell you something. Somebody needs what you provide is not the same as somebody seeing you, respecting you, caring for your heart, and loving you right. Those are not the same thing, not even in the same ballpark. Some people love the function. They love the relief. They love the convenience. They love what your presence does for them. But they do not actually love you in the way that protects you. And you can feel that, by the way. Maybe not right away, maybe not when you're in deep, Maybe not while you're still trying to believe the best, but eventually you start feeling the difference between being treasured and being useful. When you're treasured, right, there's care, there is consideration for you, there is mutual giving and loving and bending over backwards for mutually. There is some sense that your inner life matters too. How you feel matters too. How you look at something matters too. How you feel about something matters too. If you're embarrassed, if you're unhappy, if you're disgruntled, disgruntled. When you're just useful, you get celebrated most when you're easy, available, accommodating, forgiving, and giving. But the minute you need something back, the whole energy changes. Now you're difficult. Now you're too much. Now you're emotional. Now you're bringing drama. Now suddenly the person who had no problem receiving all your understanding and has no room for your pain, your hurt. That tells you a lot. That tells you what role you were really playing. And now that stings like lemon juice and razor blades. Because a lot of folk don't want to admit that they'd rather say, no, no, they loved me. They were just struggling in their own self and their own issues, maybe. Maybe. Sometimes that's true. People do struggle. People do get overwhelmed. People have wounds and people have been broken and people do go through things. I'm not denying that, although it sounds like I'm making light of it. But struggle doesn't explain everything. A person can be struggling and still care. A person can be hurting and still have some conscience about how they're affecting you or other people. A person can be really in pain and still give to others out of that pain, out of their need. A person can be imperfect and still show up with sincerity. What I'm talking about is a pattern where your humanity slowly disappears behind your usefulness. And that is different. That's not just somebody going through a hard season. That's somebody whose relationship, this is somebody whose relationship to you is organized around what you do for them more than who you are to them, actually. And that hurts on a deeper level. It really does. Because it makes you question everything. Was any of it real? You ask yourself. You do, because it's like, how could it be real and this is the result? It doesn't make any sense. Not while you're in the middle of it. Not while you're like frantic and tizzic inside of your body and you're moving very slowly and you don't know what happened and you'd like to fix it, but you think 50,000 different ways in your head, maybe days, months, however long, and you can never figure it out. Did they ever really see me? It's that bad. Did they ever love me at all? Or did they love how much I carried? And sometimes the most honest answer is this. You know, they liked your presence. They liked your valor, your strength. They liked your support. They liked what you made easier, but they weren't equipped, it seems, or not willing to love you in a way that requires equal heart and care. That's hard because you so wish they would and so wish that they did. But the hard truth is still better, I guess, than the beautiful confusion. Now, another thing people wrestle with is this: why did I ignore what I knew, what I saw with my eyes, what I heard with my ears, what I tasted with no. Imagine. The question bothers a lot of people after that fact. They look back and see all the red flags that they didn't didn't bother them at that time. You see, they look back and they see the red flags, right? They see patterns all of a sudden. They see the moments they should have said, something's not right here. Let me take this serious. And then they beat themselves up. But I don't think most people ignore what hurt because they were stupid. I think they ignore it because accepting it would have cost too much in the moment. See, truth has a price when you're attached. Truth might mean losing the future you pictured. Truth might mean starting over. Truth might mean admitting this thing is not what you thought. Truth might mean feeling embarrassed. Truth might mean being alone. Truth might mean grieving while the person is still standing right in front of you. That's not easy when you see them all the time. People stay in bad dynamics for all kinds of reasons. Hope is one, loneliness is another, history is another, chemistry is another, fear is another. And then there simply the fact that once you've invested enough, your mind starts trying to protect that investment. Now, I'm not talking about marriage. I believe if you're married, you're in it for the long haul. If nobody's jumped ship, as they say, and filed for divorce, and the divorce has not come through yet, then I'm not talking about you. I believe you should fight to the death for that one. And I don't mean if the person's beating you. I just mean give all of your effort into a positive binding types of behavior, be it counseling, be it giving more. If both of you give more, then I think you can fill whatever cup or whatever hole there is in between you. You don't want to believe you built something around a person who never planned to carry their half, right? You don't want to believe the signs were really the signs. You don't want to believe they were phases. You don't want to believe you want to believe they'll wake up. You want to believe the conversation will finally land and this part of your life will be over. But I know at this point, it's not even a part of your life, it's your life. You want to believe the version of them you met is still around there somewhere. And this other person is just temporary. And sometimes that hope becomes the thing that keeps you stuck because you're not relating to the pattern anymore. You're relating to the possibility. And possibility is seduction. Potential is seduction. Maybe if this changes, maybe when they heal, they're broken. They told me they're broken. Maybe when they calm down, maybe when life gets easier, maybe when they see they see what they're doing. Maybe when they realize what they have. But let me tell you this: potential can keep a person in pain for years, because potential doesn't have to show up on time. Potential doesn't have to be accountable. Potential doesn't even have to exist. You see what I mean? Potential doesn't have to apologize when it doesn't come through when you need it. Potential doesn't have to change, but patterns do. Patterns tell you the truth. Patterns say this is what you can expect if nothing changes. And if you keep giving more weight to the dream than the pattern, eventually the dream starts eating your life. That's why I say people don't always lose themselves in some huge dramatic way. Sometimes they lose themselves through chronic hope, hope without evidence, hope against an actual thing that's happening all the time, hope that keeps overriding what's already plain. And listen, hope is beautiful in the right place, but hope in the wrong person can become a deprecating self-abandonment type situation. You understand. you know Now here's another part of this that I think a lot of people don't talk about enough. Why do people still miss somebody who drained them, who broke them? That confuses people all the time. Because after the relationship is over, especially if it was messy or hurtful, they think, why do I still want this person after all of this stuff? Why do I still think about them? Why do I still feel pulled towards them when I know they wore me out? Part of it's simple. You get used to who's in your life. Routines matter. Familiarity matters. Even pain can become familiarity, and worse if a relationship starts out of pain and then becomes very familiar. But there's another thing. When affection is inconsistent, it can create a stronger emotional grip than steady affection does. And that sounds strange until you live it. If somebody is loving, then distant, then warm again, then cold again, then emotionally available, then gone, your system starts chasing the return of the good part. Now you're not just living in a relationship, you're waiting for the next relief, the next good text, the next soft moment, the next apology, the next night where they feel like the person you fell for, the next little sign that maybe this thing still has some life. And those small returns can keep people locked in for years. Not because the relationship is healthy, but because the unpredictability keeps the attachment activated. So after it ends, right, you don't just miss the person. Sometimes you miss the relief. You miss the possibility. You miss the dopamine hit. Then them coming back around, you miss the emotional high of the good part and interrupting the bad part. And then this is why people get ashamed of their own grief, because they think, if I miss them, it must mean it was real in a healthy way. And not necessarily. Missing someone does not prove they were good to you or good for you. Longing doesn't prove alignment. Attachment doesn't prove safety. Sometimes it's It only proves that your heart got caught in a pattern that kept starving and feeding you in the same breath. That's why some people go back. Not because they don't know better, right? But because the body can't crave what the soul is trying to recover from. And if you're listening and you're really trying to figure this out, especially if you're listening on an otherwise beautiful day when nothing else is wrong and maybe the sky is blue. And if you don't understand, right, I'm telling you, don't judge yourself too harshly. You'll see. I think you'll see eventually. You'll know, why am I still tempted? Why am I still so weak to this person? Why do I still want to hear from them? Nah, it's not always weakness. Sometimes it's a nervous system that got drained to live inside uncertainty and trained, I should say. Sometimes it's a heart that kept attaching to moments instead of measuring the whole actual pattern of the person in your life. You didn't look at the whole pattern. You didn't step back far enough. You're too close. You're in too deep. You didn't give yourself enough space away, enough time away to really look at the whole pattern, the whole picture, the whole story, every incident that happened time after time after time, and again after time and after time after time. And then this, it matters because if you don't understand why the pull is still there, you might misread the pull as destiny. We're just destined to be together. A whole lot of people have done that. They feel the intensity, the missing of the person, the ache, the obsession, the pull. And they say, this must mean something. Yeah, it means something. But not always what you think. Sometimes it means you got bonded through inconsistency, longing, unfinished emotional business. That's different from peace. That's different from mutual love. That's different from being with somebody who is actually safe for your mind, someone who respects you, someone your heart can trust with your spirit. And I wish more people understood that because they would stop romanticizing what it actually just disrupted. Now let's bring it down into, plain life. What does self-abandonment really look like? Because that phrase can sound fancy if you leave it floating in the air. Self-abandonment looks like saying yes while resentment is already forming in your chest. It looks like excusing what it keeps hurting you because you don't want to lose that person. It looks like telling yourself to wait a little longer when the pattern has already been clear for months and you're only getting older. It looks like spending more time trying to understand their behavior than telling the truth about how their actual behavior is making you feel. It looks like becoming the understanding one every single time while your own pain keeps piling up and getting deferred. It looks like feeling guilty for basic needs. It looks like getting more afraid of being misunderstood than being misread. Then, yeah, and that one's actually very important. Some people get used to used to defending their heart, that they just stop protecting it. They spend all their time trying to make sure the other person understands their intentions, right? Because maybe they'll love me if they understand it's coming from a good place, right? Understands their softness, understands that they're not attacking, not demanding, not trying to be difficult. And meanwhile, the actual issue keeps sitting there untouched. The disrespect, the neglect, the imbalance, the manipulation, the silence, the half effort, the selective empathy, the using, the emotional inconsistency that's still there. But because you got trained to explain yourself, your whole energy shifts away from self respect and into self presentation. You're no longer asking, is this right? You're asking, how do I say this in a way that won't make them pull further away? You're no longer asking, does this person treat me well? You're asking, how do I bring up mistreatment in a way that still keeps me loved? Can you say something out loud properly, the way you know it needs to be said? If you have to figure all that out and it has to be a major concern more than 10% of the time, that's self abandonment. And when that becomes your norm, the relationship can get very dangerous to your identity at that point. And I'm not talking about identity in any kind of funny way. Just honestly, it's like the who you are can be sucked away because you can't be who you are. You can't say what you think right off the bat. That's crazy talk. Because now your whole self starts organizing around preserving access to that person. So you make sure you say things and do things the right way. That becomes the main thing. The main thing is not the main thing anymore. Keep the peace, keep the bond, keep the hope, keep the contact, keep the possibility alive. And your own truths get pushed lower and lower down the priority list. That's why some people can't even answer simple questions by the end. You gotta read the person's face, trying to like read a person's face just out of the corner of your eye because you don't want to look directly at them. Kind of like how Will Smith just caught Jada's face just before he slapped the heck out of Chris Rock. He didn't look at her fully. What do you want? I don't know. What do you need? I don't know. What would make you feel safe? I don't know. What do you actually think about this? I don't know. That doesn't happen because they're empty. That happens because they've been surviving. You've been surviving. You've been in an adaptation mode so long that honesty, listen, self contact starts fading. Have you ever been there? And that's why I said earlier that by the time the relationship ends, some people aren't just grieving a person, they're trying to get back in touch with themselves because they've been editing themselves and they've been like censoring themselves in many different ways, not only with words. Now, if you're hearing all of this and thinking, okay, how do I stop doing that? Let's go there. Because I don't want to just describe the wound and leave you sitting in it. The first thing is this: you have to stop using your empathy to cover for other people's lack of character. That right there will save some years off your life. Empathy is beautiful. Understanding is wonderful. Patience is amazing. Grace, beautiful. But when those things start functioning like camouflage for somebody or someone else's selfishness, something's gone wrong. Some people don't need more understanding from you. They need consequences, and they need to know that they know what they did. Some people don't need one more beautifully explained conversation, some amazing soliloquy where all the right words are said at the right pace and time. They need to feel that access to you is changing because of their behavior and because they're not being clear, because they're not trying to align with you. They're trying to have you align with their wounds and their pains and their issues. Some people don't need you to see deeper into their wound. They need to stop making your kindness pay for what they won't fix, possibly what somebody else did to them. And that's not being hard, it's being honest. Second thing, confusion has to start counting. It has to start counting as information. Not every confusing relationship is abusive. Not every confusing person is evil. I'm not saying that at all. But chronic confusion is not a neutral thing either. And generally, if the person is confusing people or a person they supposedly love, then I can't say they're not evil. I don't know under what standard are they living their life? God's standard from the Bible or from the world's evil standard of the devil? Just being real. But as I said, chronic confusion is not a neutral thing. It's hurting somebody when somebody's always being confusing, never just being plain. If somebody consistently leaves you unsure where you stand, unsure what they mean, unsure whether they care, unsure whether your pain matters, unsure whether their words match their actions, and there's a whole lot of congruency going on around. That uncertainty itself is information. Stop acting like clarity has to come gift wrapped with a blinking sign of confession. Sometimes the confusion is the confession. Third thing, you got to stop treating your needs like accusations. A need is not an attack. A boundary is not cruelty. A standard is not arrogance. Wanting consistency is not being too much. Wanting honesty is not dramatic. Wanting to be considered is not asking for luxury. A whole lot of people shrink because they've been made to feel guilty for wanting what any healthy person should want. And if you believe your needs are the problem, you will keep feeling ashamed every time your spirit asks for something real. Fourth thing, watch the pattern more than the promise. I've said that in different ways already, but I need to bring it home. People can say beautiful things. Some people are very good at that. Matter of fact, they got AI now. Some people know how to apologize just enough to keep the door open. Some people know how to cry at the first moment, text at the right time, speak in a soft voice, remember the right details, say all the right things when they feel you pulling away. And if you keep falling for the emotional timing instead of evaluating the behavioral pattern, you'll keep getting recaptured by moments. Moments are not character, moments are not commitment, moments are not transformations, but what repeats tells the truth. Fifth thing, you have to let yourself disappoint people who were comfortable with the version of you that costs you too much. That's a big one. Because sometimes the reason people keep abandoning themselves is not that they don't know better. It's that they know exactly what will happen if they change. If they stop overgiving, somebody's going to be upset. Somebody might leave. If they stop always being available, somebody's going to be disappointed. If they tell the truth faster, somebody's going to get cold or call them cold. If they set a boundary, somebody's going to set, or they're going to say that you changed. And maybe you have changed. Maybe you had to. Maybe the version of you that kept trying to be endlessly available, endlessly understanding, endlessly flexible, endlessly forgiving, endlessly self betraying, maybe that version of you was not sustainable. Maybe that version of you was not amazing. Maybe that version of you was just tired and scared of always being out of control and not knowing what was coming next. And now you're learning that the connection which requires your disappearance is not, or actually is, sorry, too expensive. That's growth, though. That's not bitterness. Let me say one more thing because I think this gets missed too. Stopping self-abandonment does not mean becoming cold or suspicious or harsh. You have to fight against those things. They'll creep up if you let them. It doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop offering your heart without paying attention to what happens in certain situations and what's happening to your heart. That's just wisdom. You have a right to protect yourself at all times. It means you stop confusing chemistry with safety. It means you stop confusing intensity with intimacy. It means you stop confusing being chosen sometimes with being valued consistently. It means you stop assuming that because you can understand somebody's pain, you are therefore supposed to keep enduring the damage that pain causes. That's huge. Understanding why somebody does what they do does not actually automatically mean you are assigned to live under nonsense. You can understand it and still leave. You can understand it and still close the door. You can understand it and still say, no, not like this. That is not lack of compassion on your part. That is simply self-respect. Have some self-respect. You matter too. Don't turn a person into a god. There is one God. He created the heavens and the earth. He created man. He created you. Have some self-respect. I'm not saying you should pump up smoke and think more highly of yourself than you ought to. No, I'm not saying that at all. And that's the truth, right? Until somebody learns that, well, they're going to keep making these tragic mistakes and magic trades that are bad for them. They trade self respect for access. They trade inner peace for proximity. They trade clarity for hope. They trade emotional safety for not being alone. And then when it all collapses, they say, how did I get here? Slowly. That's how. Usually slowly. One override at a time, one excuse at a time, one swallowed feeling at a time, one bitten lip at a time, one delayed boundary at a time, one extra chance at a time, one more conversation that should have been the last one. Can I say at a time? One more moment of talking yourself out of whatever you knew. That's how. So now let's answer the question clearly. Why do people lose themselves trying to be loved? Because sometimes they're not just trying to love, they're trying to secure something unstable. Jelly beans. You see, they're trying to turn confusion into commitment. They're trying to turn effort into reciprocity. They're trying to turn usefulness into cherishedness. They're trying to turn occasional warmth into real actual safety. They want it to be a pattern, but it's not. And while they're doing all that, right, they're slowly starting, slowly start organizing their life around protecting and preserving the bond instead of preserving themselves and living in the bond. And that's the answer. And how do you stop, right? You stop when you stop calling self-betrayal love. You really have to look at the pattern, look at the behavior, and not to consider what you're giving, and not to regularly do that. I'm not saying to do that at all. Grab out a piece of paper, put your name on one side, put their name on the other side, and list the things that you have given. And it doesn't have to be just financial, it doesn't have to be just emotional, just everything you can think of. Maybe you did give gifts of finance. Maybe you gave respect. Maybe you can't say the same for them. Maybe you gave a lot of time. Maybe you can't say that for them. You understand? Real love doesn't require you to disappear so they can live their life somewhere else and reappear when they're bored or reappear when they need your energy. Because whoever it is they're with or whoever they want to be with is not giving it to them or whatever it is, or they're not being supplied wherever else they need to be supplied, or their success isn't what they thought it was going to be, and now they just need a confidence booster, and then they're gone for another time or gone for good. If you've got to become smaller, I'm saying, if you got to become quieter, more unsure, less honest, more tired, more depleted, more self-abandoning, more accommodating, more disconnected from your own needs, just to keep a relationship functioning. And whatever that is, is not healthy love, and that is not a relationship. It might be attachment, might be history, of course. You might be lonely, and you definitely saw sparks, so there's chemistry. You might just be downright fearful, or it could just be a habit. This is us, and this is what we do. More than likely, could be trauma bonding. Or maybe it's just hope that things will change. And think that's where some people finally breathe, though, because they stop trying to force a noble meaning into something that was just hurting them. Not every loss needs to be romanticized. Not every hard relationship was there to teach you forever. Sometimes it's a short time. Sometimes the lesson is, I should have listened sooner. And that's when you see your real growth. And if you're in a season right now where you feel like this episode is reading your mail a little bit, I want you to hear me carefully. Don't wait until total collapse to honor what you already know. Don't wait until you hate yourself or hate them. Don't wait until you're numb. Don't wait until your confidence is totally blown and you don't know if you're coming or going. Don't wait until you're begging for the bare minimum and calling that a relationship. Don't wait until you're explaining away things that would hurt anybody else. Pay attention. Listen, I've said all to say that, listen, now you don't need 5 years of confusion to call something healthy. Now you don't need to be abandoned to see the imbalance. Now you don't need the relationship to end before you realize you've been disappearing the whole time. That's freedom. That's maturity. That's wisdom. And that's why I wanted to do this episode the way I did. Because, like I said, and I do this, and someone might say it sounds like I'm ruminating, but I'm really, really trying to see it from different angles because you have the answer. I don't have the answer here. Your answer is in all of the patterns that have happened with you in the midst of them. And you've helped the patterns. You've supported the patterns that have been destroying and breaking you for a time now. And enough is enough. Because like I said at the beginning, if you listen to Heal After a Breakup Without Losing Yourself, Rebuild Boundaries and Self-Worth, that episode dealt more with what to do after things fall apart, but the rebuilding, the healing, the getting yourself back. But this one is about seeing how people go missing in the first place. And if you can understand that, you're not just healing the wound, you're strengthening the part of you that will recognize the wound sooner next time and won't allow it. So let me tell you this, or leave you with this. You don't stop losing yourself by becoming hard. No, you stop losing yourself by becoming honest. Honest about what hurts, honest about what's happening, honest about what you keep excusing, honest about what's draining you, honest about becoming something around certain people because of certain things and certain behaviors and certain actions and reactions. Honest about the difference between being loved and being useful for someone. Honesty will save you a lot of trouble. It always, I can honestly say, it won't always feel good. And it will cost you, of course, your fantasy in most cases. And sometimes it costs you access, a lot of the time, actually. Sometimes it'll cost you the version of the story you were trying to hold together. But it will save you, though. And I'd rather lose a fantasy than lose myself. And I hope you would too. Listen, if this episode hit more, understand I don't have the answers, and obviously to have a conversation with you would be really the best thing. You can go back and listen to Heal After a Breakup Without Losing Yourself, Rebuild Boundaries and Self-Worth. I have that on as one of my episodes. I think it's number 300. Because that one pairs with this one really well, I guess. This episode is the why underneath the wound. That one is more about what healing looks like once you finally admit what the wound has been doing to you all along. Anyhow, I appreciate y'all for listening. Take care of yourself. Pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to what people are doing to you and what you're doing to other people. And don't keep calling it love if what it keeps costing you is you. Anyway, until next time, this is Michael C. Murray, and this is You're Probably Right podcast. Take care of yourself. Peace out. Hey, come check out